Hello BAT students. I'm making this video to cover some of the important issues surrounding the Ecospot regarding some of the feedback that I gave to you about your ideas and some of the things that I think you should consider as you move forward with the project. So let's get started. So one very important thing about this project is that it is most of your grade for this course. It's about 60%. Um, and for that reason, I think it is fundamental that you do your best to make your project something that you can be proud of. Um, you know, there's all these steps that we're doing, and I'm expecting that over that time you're going to be improving more and more, and the final product should be something that would be very creative, that uses different kinds of technologies, demonstrates your capacity to communicate and engage using online technology, and something that would be impressive to me and to your classmates. So just take that into account. It should be something that you do more than the minimum for. Now, overall, what we're doing here is just with the Ecospot is just creating an interactive media product that addresses an environmental issue and that can be shared with a broad audience. Now, talking about the media product itself, it should be something that can be posted somewhere on its own online, and that people can look at it without being directed or without having a presenter showing that to them. Very importantly, it should be something that you can share with your classmates through the BAT workshop, and also something that you should be able to share online with your audience. So make sure at least that you have some kind of a link that you can put in the workshop so that we can look at it. And there's also that other suggestion from the Ecospot idea assignment, which says that you can engage organizations and your community in the creation process of your Ecospot. Now, that particular suggestion would certainly make your work better, in the sense that you would have then a bit, someone else to back you up, and they might be bringing in other resources and content, although that's not necessarily a requirement. The really important thing about the engagement for the Ecospot is the engagement with your audience that you would achieve once you have already created your project and your audience looks at it. That's the engagement that we really care about. Now, the steps for the Ecospot are, as you can see in the workshop, the Ecospot idea. Then the next one coming up is the research and action plan, in which you will be explaining in more detail the environmental issue that you're going to be covering with your Ecospot. And also you're going to be detailing what you expect your Ecospot to look like or to sound like. What are the different components that it's going to have? Sort of a general sketch of what you're going to do and what's going to be perceived as by your audience. Then we have the Ecospot 1.0, which is essentially a draft. It's a preliminary version that we can look at, and that then you will be able to go ahead and improve into the Ecospot 2.0, and that's the final version that you would go ahead and share with your audience. And for each one of those steps, there's feedback represented here by these arrows that comes from your peers, comes from the student leaders, and comes from me, essentially trying to help you improve your Ecospot and make it better suited for the requirements of this course, but also overall a better product for your audience. Now, one of the things that I mentioned when I was giving feedback was that you should be covering an environmental or conservation issue. And you should be clear about what that is. I mean, you should know it. And, think about it. The name of the project, Ecospot, it's making allusion to ecology, to ecosystems. So we have to be thinking about the environment in general when we are creating this kind of project. You should be able to provide some background and explain how your project relates to the environment in the next step, the Ecospot research and action plan. Uh, and one thing to consider with that is that you should find ways for your audience to get involved. I mean, how can they make a difference about that environmental issue, right? Not just say, okay, there's this information that you might find, interesting or whatever, but also think how can they make a difference and how can you link them to those resources to make a difference in those issues. The next thing I was talking about in my feedback was the importance of making your project interactive. That is something that we talk about a lot and that I'm going to be looking for in each step of the Ecospot process. And what we mean by that is that uh, your project should give you not only the capacity to put out some content that your audience would then be looking at and they would be observers of that content, but also your project should then allow your audience to respond to that by providing feedback or comments or some kind of additional content, um, so that there's this communication between you and your audience, or in any case, at least your audience is also responding to your project in some way. Now, there's several ways to do this. For example, you could encourage people to provide you comments. If you're doing a YouTube video or something like that, your last slide could say, please provide comments and feedback about this work. You could ask participants to provide feedback with a survey poll. You could also include a quiz or a survey as a central part of your project. You could, alternatively, you could say, hey, could you please help out with creating the next version of this project? You could also, and I will talk about this a little bit later, add a forum in which your audience can communicate with each other. If you're doing a website, that's one way to do this. And another suggestion would be you can also cross-link your project with other related projects that have an interactive component. And I want to emphasize that it has to be other projects that actually have some interactive component, because it's not enough to just say, okay, here's a link that talks more about this issue if you want to know more. It should be a link that takes your audience somewhere when they can actually do something about the issue or can provide some kind of response. There's, for example, you can link them to signing a petition, to joining a conservation project by contributing time or money. You can link them to citizen science projects that they can join, that kind of thing. Now, a note about that is that I will be looking for you to include that interactive component in your Ecospot, but I will not necessarily be able to look at whether or not people are actually replying or providing some kind of input. And that's just the way things are designed with the time frame that we have. I won't be able to be verifying that. So don't be too worried if you think, well, there's not enough time for people to come in and provide comments because I'm just finishing this and then posting it for grading. That's not a big issue. Now, one last thing I was talking about in the feedback that I provided was, as a recommendation, consider a broader audience, or generally a broad audience. And that came essentially as a response to some of you saying, well, I'm going to create my Ecospot and then it's going to go as something that I'm going to show to my coworkers, or something that I'm going to show to my students, or something that I'm going to show to my family, people that you would interact with in person anyway, right? So that is all okay. But one thing about online technology is that it allows you to go beyond your normal sphere of influence and reaching people that might live in a different place or that you might have never met before, go beyond that. So even if your primary audience would be people in your immediate community, you can also think about your project about something that goes beyond that and consider, okay, who else would benefit from looking at my project, at the information and resources that I'm including there, because there must be people. And with that, you might be able to actually uh, make some change happen. If the more people you engage into thinking about the issues, the better the chances of actually making a difference in the long run. And that's what we're trying to do here. Now, quickly, I want to talk a little bit about references. For the Ecospot research and action plan, you should include 4 to 6 references. They don't have to be peer-reviewed references, but they have to be reliable sources. So someone's blog is not a reliable source. Not everything that you find in the internet is a reliable source. So think about it as far as, okay, do I trust this publication to be including proper information, right? The Ecospot itself, that is whatever your media product is, does not need to include those references, but you're being a responsible communicator, right? And for that reason, if you're using external sources, it makes sense to include references whenever appropriate, just so that people might go back and look at it. And just so that you're saying, hey, this is where the information is coming from. I'm not, just coming up with it out of nowhere. So if you're using external sources in your Ecospot, in the actual media product, you should include both in-text citations and then full citations somewhere. For slide-based presentations, this is sort of general advice, but I think it's really important, because if you're doing something like this, there's a few things that I think would take away a lot of points if you're not careful when you're using, let's say, PowerPoint or Google Slides or Prezi. Your presentation should be something that is informative and engaging on its own, so you don't need to be there to present it. And so that, one of the ways to make this work that way would be, first of all, having a self-playing presentation. That you have it start and then it goes on its own. And you have certain timing. But the other thing is, even that is not necessarily all that engaging. Having your audience read from your slides, it's not something that really most of us would want to do. So a good way to actually be engaging would be to include a narration, so that you're guiding people through the information. Or another way is, and some people are good at doing this, is using a lot of slides, with each slide having just a little bit of text, so that you're switching slides quickly and they're visually appealing and going through the topics with a lot of slides going on in relatively quick succession. As usual, and I can't emphasize this enough, do not do text walls. Do not have one slide that is only text and a large number of lines of text that seriously nobody wants to read. It's really tedious to do that when you're supposed to be the audience. When someone is presenting to you, you certainly don't want to be reading blocks of text. Now, besides that, I also wanted to talk about some of the things that you can do for the Ecospot. So first, and I wanted to talk about the tools that you can use that come from Google. There's so many things that you can do now. But remarkably, I think the thing that I wanted to highlight is that Google has created this online environment in which you can embed any of those tools into a website that you're creating, if you're doing something like that. So you can embed Google Docs or spreadsheets or Google Slides, maps, forms, Google Earth tours, any of those things. And the mechanism for embedding them is very similar. They have sort of the same platform to put them into a website. So that's certainly an option. And then there's also the capacity to use Google Drive, which you have through your Miami email account, in order to store video and audio files that then you can embed into your website. It's a relatively simple process, and if you're using video or audio, then it might be something you want to look at so that you're not occupying space in the platform that you're using, since sometimes the free versions of them have limited storage. So, of course, for all of these things, I'm not giving you that step-by-step explanations. You can probably look them up using Google, but if you have questions or are interested in any of it and need some help, you can always send me a quick email or reply to any of my posts in the workshop. Another technology that I think you might want to look at, depending on what you're doing, would be SoundCloud. It is an audio sharing platform. And it has also the capacity, besides just storing audio that is then made available online, that people can comment on your audio track, and they can put the comments whatever they want in the audio track. So each one of these little boxes here represents a different comment by someone that was listening. So if you say something interesting at a minute and 10, for example, someone can say, "Oh, I find this very funny," and just put a comment right there. There's also this really interesting feature that I found when I was going through your Ecospots, and it's called a Talkie forum, which is essentially a forum that you can create and then embed into a website. If you're creating a website, that's something that you can do, and so people that visit your website can create threads and can interact with one another. Another thing that you might want to use for your project is annotations by YouTube, which are things that little bits of text that you can add on top of your video. One of the things that people have used this for is to add in-text citations to their videos, so that if you can disable them so that they're not bothering you if you don't want to have them on, but then you can have them if someone wants to look at the sources. Another thing that is very useful about them is you can also make those into links to other videos or other websites. So that might be a way to link to projects that might be engaging and relating to your topic. Another thing that you can do if you're creating a video would be to use either TED Ed Lessons or EduCanon. These are two very similar platforms, and essentially what they do is they take a YouTube video and then they allow you to that video add some interactive components, such as a quiz or such as an open essay question. So things like that, and certainly it's something that is would be excellent, for example, to create the kind of interactive components that we need for the Ecospot. There's also technology that you can use to record a video, in particular the kind of thing that I use, which is recording the screen of my computer. The one that I use and that I can recommend is called Manycam. It is software that can be used for many things, but one of the things that it does really well is recording from your desktop, and it can also record from your webcam or allow you to switch between the two. You can also use it for video conferences, and a similar software that is also available online for free would be Screencast-O-Matic, and you have the website right there. So those are options that you can use if in the creation of your videos. Now, another thing that I wanted to cover before I go would be what we're going to do for the next assignment. There's a suggestion in there for the Ecospot Research and Action Plan that you can use Google Docs to share your action plan with your classmates. Now, I have a couple of requirements that I think are important for that. If you're doing a Google Doc, you should make sure that you are setting up the privileges or permissions for sharing, so that your classmates are able to see your document, and also that you give me editing privileges for your work. And that's not because I want to edit your work at all. It's just so that I can see what was the version of your document that was posted by the due date for that assignment. That's the only purpose of that. Now, if you are commenting on someone else's Google Doc, you should also make a post in the workshop saying, hey, I also left a comment into your Google Doc, right? And that's just so that I can trace who has provided feedback and who hasn't a bit easier. Otherwise, I might not be able to notice. And also what happens sometimes is that if you post a comment and then it says the person that is looking at the comment, that owns that document, says resolved, then it's hidden and it disappears from view. I can look at it if I have editing privileges, but I have to look for it. So if you're doing that, just also make a comment into the workshop. Finally, it's about time, if you haven't done it already, that you start playing with the technology that you're going to be using for your Ecospot. Technological issues are one of the things that might slow you down when you're working to make your Ecospot. And I'll tell you, it just happened to me. I was creating the first version of this video, and then I got my computer crashed, and I have to come back and start from the beginning. Other than that, I'll just tell you I'm available for questions, including if you are stuck trying to learn how to use technology or having technical issues. Let me know. Maybe I can help you. Maybe I can find an alternative for you. But I'm certainly there here for that also. There's also a frequently asked question document that you should be able to access with some answers to questions about the Ecospot. So I'm gonna put the link not only in my posts requesting questions, but also in the post including this video. And that's all. Thank you for listening, and I hope you're having a good time right now. I'll be around and available to help you out with anything you need, and I'll see you at the workshop.